Well, we want to welcome you to Frontline Christian Center, and we are so glad that you have joined us online for this midweek Bible study. You know, this is the day the Lord hath made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Just a couple of real quick announcements I want to mention. If you haven't been getting our online newsletter or emailed to you, you can request a newsletter that we send out. It lets you know what's happening in our church. It has some interesting and encouraging devotional material. We also have a Youth Alive event happening this Saturday from 3 to 6 for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And if you know a family that has middle schoolers or high schoolers, just give us a ring or send us an email or text us, and we'd love to give you the information about this very exciting event that's going to have a number of speakers. We have gifts and prizes, and these young people are going to be involved in a lot of games and fun activities, and so we'd like to invite you to be a part of this very special event called The Launch. And I think it's going to be a fun time for our youth. And Pastor Leanne is pulling that together, and we're so grateful for her. This evening, I've entitled the message, God is for me. I want to encourage you, God is for you. He is preoccupied with you. The Bible says He thinks about you continually. We find that in Psalm 139. But if you have a moment and would turn to your Bible, Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 11 is going to be a key verse that we're going to be sharing from this evening. This is a verse that is very popular, and so I want to share it with you as well. And certainly we need an encouraging word in our world today. Jeremiah 29:11 says this. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. For I know the plans I have for you." See, God is for you. Let's pray as we continue this message this evening. Father, we thank you for your word. Lord, it is timeless. It ministers to us. And Father, I pray tonight that, Lord, this word would be an encouragement to those that are listening. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Yeah. If you've ever been around a child who's been brought up in church or have had some type of biblical instruction from parents or have been influenced in the Bible in some way, you discover that the child has faith, a little faith, simple faith in the goodness of God. It's so evident, it's so wonderful to see children who have a simple childlike faith in a living God. And we teach them songs like "Jesus loves me, this I know," and "Jesus loves the little children." And our children have this simple childlike faith that God is good, that God loves them, that God is for them. When they are raised through the years knowing God, they have this simple childlike faith until something happens in their life that causes them to wonder. For example, I know children who've been in situations where their parents were struggling, and they would go to their bedroom and pray, "Lord, help my parents to get along." And not too long after that, the parents wind up in a divorce. And the child goes, "Lord, what's happening? Why is this happening? Where are you in all this? I thought you were for me." Or it could be that a child wants a dog and the parents relent and get a dog. You know, it has to be a Christian child that wants a dog, because an unchristian child would want a cat. Just teasing, just teasing. But this child wants a dog, begs for a dog, and so they get a puppy, and they raise this puppy, and it's not long till the dog runs out into the street and is hit by a car and killed, and the child cries, and God, where are you? Why is this happening? I thought you were for me. Or it could be that the child has a relationship with grandpa or grandma or Nana, and Nana's in the hospital, and the child prays, but Nana doesn't come home. God, I thought you were for me. Why is this going on? Why am I experiencing this? And tragically, some people conclude that God doesn't care, that God's not there, that God is not for me. And that may be where some of you are this evening. Maybe you've gone through a series of traumatic or challenges that have caused you to wonder, does God really care? Is God really for me? Does God really have my best interest at heart? You grew up and you called yourself a Christian, but things happen. And now you aren't really sure what you believe or where you stand on issues. I had someone send to me not too long ago a link from CNN from their webpage called I Report. And this friend said, Pastor, you really need to read this, and it will open your eyes where a lot of people in the world are living today. And so I read it, and it just brought cold chills over me as I read this. And let me read it to you. It's an excerpt from Why I Raised My Children Without God. And here's what the article said. It said, if God is our Father, then he's not a good parent. Good parents don't allow their children to inflict harm on others. Good people don't stand by and watch horrible acts committed against innocent men, women, and children. They don't condone violence and abuse. He has given us a free will, you say? Well, our children have free will, but we still step in and guide them. How many times have you heard, why did God allow this to happen? If there is a good, all-knowing, all-powerful God who loves his children, doesn't it make sense that he wouldn't allow murders or child abuse, wars, brutal beatings, torture, and millions of heinous acts to be committed throughout the history of mankind? Doesn't this go against everything Christ taught us in the New Testament? The question we should be asking is this: why did we allow this to happen? How can we fix this? No imaginary person is going to give us the answers or tell us why. And that is where a lot of people live. They feel God is aloof, that God is distant. If he was a good parent, he wouldn't allow these things to happen that sometimes we experience or sometimes we may go through. And so this evening, I want to share a few verses that will help clearly state that God is for you. And I know just preaching about it, just sharing these verses isn't going to change your mind, but I think if you grab hold of these truths, it will set you free and will help you to wrestle with some of these things that confront our society today. And so I'm going to show you this evening in the Bible where God is for you and how believing in that will transform you. And when you believe that God is for you, it makes a difference in how you live your life. Jeremiah 29:11. Let's look at it one more time. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Now listen to this. Plans to prosper you, not harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. That's God's plan for you. God's plan is to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. And I believe with all my heart that our good God has a great plan for every single one of you. He has a plan to prosper you, to bless you, and to give you a future and a hope. When I wake up in the morning, I'm excited to think that God has something greater for me today, something new, that God wants to help me to get to a new level. And here's what I know about God. He wants the very same thing for you as well. He is a good, good God who has a good plan for you. And so this evening, I want everyone to say that God is for me. Say that with me. God is for me. And that is a truth that I want you to take with you this entire week. God is for me. Paul asked this question in Romans 8, verse 31. He said, if God is for us, then who can be against us? If God is for us, then who can be against us? I just love the power of that statement that Paul makes. If God, who is all powerful, all knowing, all present, is for us, then who can be against us? I want to remind you how very big God is. He is an awesome God. I was taking my son to the airport. He was flying to Chicago this evening, and this morning early, about 5 o'clock, we were on our way to the airport, and we got to talking about the stars and galaxies, and I said, Jonathan, God has created all of that. In fact, the Bible says in Psalm 19:1, it says that the heavens declare the glory of God. God has created stars and planets and galaxies that are billions of light years away. That's how big God is. And if you could travel at the speed of light, which is 186,282 miles per second, did you know it only take you 2 seconds to reach the moon? It would take 8 minutes to reach the sun. In 4 months, at the speed of light, you would be able to exit our solar system. And continuing at the speed of light, it would take 5 years for you to reach Alpha Centauri, our nearest star. It would then take 100,000 years traveling at the speed of light to exit the Milky Way galaxy. If you wanted to visit the Great Nebula, the nearest galaxy, it would take, traveling at the speed of light, now hear this, 1.5 million years just to get to the nearest galaxy. In fact, you could travel for 4.5 billion years and still never leave our universe. That's how big God is. God created the heavens. In fact, that's what Psalm 19:1 says. The heavens declare the glory of God. We serve a big God who created a huge universe. And that God who created the universe, it cares and has concern for you. And so that's what Paul is saying. If God is for us, who could be against us? If God, who created this mammoth universe, is on your side, who could ever come against you? That's why we need to be on the Lord's side. Now, how do we know that God is for us? Well, look at Romans 8:32, the very next verse. It says this. It says, he who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? Wow. When you realize that God is for you, it changes the way you live your life. When you recognize that he was willing to give up his son for you, what an investment. If God is willing to give up his son for you and make such a costly investment, let me share with you and convey to you that he wants you to be successful. He wants you to prosper. He wants you to have a hope and a future, as his word says. That's our God, who created this mammoth universe He wants you to be successful. So God has a plan to prosper you and not harm you. I want you to just grasp that thought that God is for me. In fact, why don't you just say that to your neighbor right now? God is for me. He absolutely is. And when you realize that truth, that God is for you, God's not against you. God's not up in heaven with lightning bolts trying to see if he can make you into a crispy critter. He's not trying to cause you to stumble or fall. And a lot of times people say, why did God do that to me? God doesn't do that to you. God loves you and cares for you. And so there are 3 perspective changes that I want you to realize when God is for you. 3 perspectives that are so important to help us to change how we think. Number 1 is I don't hide from God, but run to God. I don't hide from God, but run to God. Listen, when you don't trust God, your nature is to run and hide from God, much like Adam did. Adam and Eve, when God came walking in the garden after they had, partaken of the forbidden fruit, they suddenly realized that they had broken God's law. And so when God came into the garden, we find this verse in Genesis chapter 3, specifically in verse 10. First thing God says, where are you? Adam, where are you? Of course, God knew exactly where they are. But let me suggest to you this evening that God still asks that question of us. Where are you? Why are you running? Why are you hiding? And notice what verse 10 says. He answered, Adam did, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Because he did not trust the nature and the goodness of God. God's a good God. And Adam feared God because he didn't have a relationship at a level where he could trust God. You know, I had a friend who had a daughter, and a number of years ago when I worked part-time at Sears, she would come in occasionally. She was just, about 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. But she was very shy, maybe borderline autistic. But when you tried to say hi to her, she would put her arm up over her eyes, hiding. She thought you wouldn't be able to see her when she would put her arm up over her eyes. She was so shy. She was trying to hide. She was afraid. And I asked my friend, I said, well, how'd you get through to her? And he made this statement. He said, Nate, it was through unconditional love. You know, that's a picture of our God. Our God loves us unconditionally. And sometimes we try to hide from God. Sometimes we think God is out to get us, and so we do our own thing. Listen, God's not out to get you. God is crazy about you. God loves you. And some of you may be hiding from God right now. You may be disconnected from church or from his word, or you may feel bad about yourself, or maybe you have done something that keeps you from drawing close to the Lord. Something happened, and now you're not talking with God. Now you're like Adam out in the garden hiding. That relationship has been broken. 1 Timothy says this. In the Living Bible, verse 1 of chapter 6, it says, some people have missed the most important thing in life. They don't know God. What a profound verse. Some people have missed the most important thing in life. They don't know God. And when you don't know God, you start trying to be God by fixing all your problems, doing it your own way, doing things that cause you to make incredible mistakes in life. In fact, there are two mistakes that I want to talk to you about that when you don't know God, quite often you make these two mistakes. The first one is this. Well, we deny God. When we really don't know God, we deny who He is. Well, I don't believe in God. You know, you've been hurt, something has happened in your life, and your picture of God has been broken, crumbled. And so you just deny God. Well, I don't believe in God. I don't, you know. When I hear people tell me I don't believe in God, I often say, well, tell me, what kind of God do you don't believe in? Because I probably don't believe in that kind of God either. Quite often. You know, I'm not going to defend a God that is not the true God in whom we serve. The second mistake that we sometimes make is simply this. We create our own God. You know, well, in fact, I was at a auto store not too long ago, and I heard a lady talking to one of the employees, and she said, well, I like to think that God is, and she listed a few things that just were not in line with God's word. You know, let me respectfully say to you, it doesn't matter what you think about God or what your opinion about God. What matters is the truth about God. What does the Bible say about God? That is what matters. Because if you have some faulty foundation of who God is, it's going to mess up your life. It's going to cause you to collapse the first time something doesn't go just right. I have no doubt that if more people really knew God, really had a relationship with God, that they would love Him, that they would trust Him, that they would follow His plan, they would want to run to God. Not run from God, run to God. When you face a challenge or something happens, sometimes the number one response is, well, I'm going to not believe in God, or I think God is this is something else. I want to challenge you that we need to run to God. In fact, Proverbs 18:10 says, the name of the Lord is a fortified tower. Now listen to this. The righteous run to it and are safe. That should be our response when things happen in our life. Listen, God is for you. God has made an incredible investment in you by sending His Son, Jesus Christ, to die on a cross. He wants you to be successful. And we should run to Him when we find ourselves in a challenge. The second thing that I want you to see this evening is this. I don't live for God's approval, but from His approval. You know, there are so many people that get caught up in this, well, I just need to, you know, make God proud of me or make God happy. Listen, I don't live for God's approval, but from His approval. Notice what the Word of God says. It says, but God demonstrates His own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And this is for all those who walk around seeking God's approval. Well, I've been doing good. God must love me. I blew it again. God must be mad at me. You know, I helped someone today. You know, I saw a beggar and I gave them some money or some food. God must really be happy with me. Oh my goodness, I blew it again. God must be upset. You know, that makes God very schizophrenic. I want you to hear this. It's not, God loves you not based on what you do. There's nothing that you can do or not do to cause God to love you any more than He does right now. God loves you, period. That's the essence of who God is. God is love. It's not based on what you do or not do. It's based on His love. And all we have to do is simply reach out and accept that love. Call on his name. In fact, the Bible says those who call on his name shall be saved. Listen, you don't have to clean up to take a bath. You just come to the Lord just like you are, because God has already demonstrated his love for us, even that while we were still sinners. But God commendeth his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died, paid the price to let you know that you are loved. When Nathan was in college, he was excited. He was going to be the closer. He had been named the closer, and he was looking forward to a career in baseball. And I remember him sending a text saying, Dad, I just want you to know I'm hoping to make it big in baseball. And he did go a ways. He actually wound up playing for the Detroit Tigers in the minor leagues for a little short span. And we were proud of him. But I remember in his college years writing him back a text. I'll always remember this. Son, it doesn't matter whether you make the big leagues or not. It doesn't matter your batting average. It doesn't matter how fast you throw a baseball. We're going to love you, period. Either way, it's not what you do to cause us to be proud of you or to love you. We love you, period. And that's how God loves us. It's not based on our performance. It's not based on our resume. It's not based on a list of do's and don'ts. Now, God does have things he wants us to accomplish. He does have a work for us to do, but it's not based on our works. It's based on faith in Jesus Christ. It's based on the fact that he loves us, period. Period. You know, when I was playing baseball, I always wanted my father to think that I did well. In fact, I would always look in the stands. He always came. He always would come to every game. And I tried my best. But I remember my dad telling me one day, he said, son, I love you not based on what you do, but because you're my son. Sometimes we get caught up in this legalism or this tension that I've got to perform, I've got to do well for God to be proud, or God to like me, or God to love me, or God to reward me. God loves us unconditionally. In fact, that's what this verse is saying, that God demonstrated his love. It's tangible. We can see it. He put love into action. It wasn't just words. But God so loved us that he sent his son for you and for me today. Amen. The second thing that I want you to see is this. I don't fear what happens to me because I know God is working in me. I don't fear what happens to me because I know God is working in me. You see, as I trust God, as I develop a relationship with him, as I understand that God is for me, I don't fear what happens to me because I know that God is working in me. I know that God is bigger than any situation, any problems, any circumstance that I may have. I know even in challenging things, God is working. I had a loved one that was traveling out of town, and he really shouldn't have been in a car. He wasn't really, he was upset. He was stressed. And our family just began to pray. It was late at night, and I know that he just needed some time to calm down. And I said, Lord, I don't know. I'm just going to leave it in your hands. I know you're working in this person's life. Lord, do a miracle. Found out later that this person had 2 flat tires and had to sit in his car overnight until the next morning. And those hours allowed him to calm down, allowed him to think straight, and to make good, appropriate decisions. God answered that prayer. Now, maybe That person didn't think God answered that prayer. I had 2 flat tires. How could God answer a prayer? But God was gracious. God was kind. God was working. Even in the things that don't look like that God is working, sometimes God is working the best for us. Amen? One day we'll realize that God is working in you so he can do something through you. God is at work in you so that he can do something through you. You know, there's that verse that says, and we know that all things work together for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. We know that all things. I know this is a very popular verse, Romans 8:28, and we hear a lot of ministers and pastors share on it, because it is such a powerful verse. We know that all things work for the good of those who love him. This verse isn't for everybody. If you don't love God, if you're not serving God, if you're stiff-arming God, this verse isn't going to apply to you. Because this verse says it only applies to those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God has a plan for each and every one of us. We are God's workmanship created in Christ Jesus to do good works. In other words, God has a purpose for every single person that calls on his name, that surrenders their heart to him. God has a plan to prosper you, not harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. Sometimes God is wanting to do a work in you so that he can do something through you. You know, I attended Central Bible College, and I was a double major. I was a music major, and I was a Bible major. And I remember the first year that I attended Central Bible College, there was the radio voice of the Assemblies of God called the Revival Time Choir. And they came to our church, and it was my goal. I wanted to be so much a part of this choir, and what an incredible choir it was. And large choir, sounded phenomenal. So I tried out. In fact, I was privileged to even have an early tryout. I went and tried out, and then the next week or so they had additional tryouts. And then the day came when they were going to post those who made the choir. And so eagerly and anxiously, I made my way to the music department, looked at the bulletin board. I carefully examined every name to discover that my name was not a part of the Revival Time Choir. And I can't blame the director. I'm not a great singer. I mean, I love music. I can play the piano. I can sing in the shower. I don't know if that gets me anywhere, but I had high hopes. But I was so discouraged afterwards that I went to my room, and I didn't want to stay at Bible school. I called my dad and said, "Dad, I want to come home." He said, "No, you're going to stay there, and you're going to fulfill your purpose." But Dad, I don't. My heart's not in it anymore. I didn't make the choir. Well, maybe God has something else for you to do. Well, to make a long story short, I heard of another choir that was auditioning. It was a smaller ensemble. I went and tried out. And I must have been very anxious because I said, I can work hard. I just said everything I could say to try to make this choir. The director started laughing, and he said, "I don't usually do this, but I want you to know you're in the choir. Now, we're going to work on your voice, but you're in the choir." I'll always remember that. Dennis Adams allowed me to be a part of the choir at the time. It's called Pentecost Choir. He was a senior. The next year, I became the choir director. I began to do arranging and orchestrating, and we traveled. I worked with a friend to do the scheduling, and we traveled all over the United States, scheduling every night of the week, singing in different churches and we saw the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls. We drank coffee in Seattle. Boy, it was a dream. And I would have never had that opportunity if I had have made the Revival Time Choir, which is a great choir. A lot of my friends were a part of that choir, but God had a different path, a different road. And I'm so grateful that I did not make the Revival Time Choir, because God had something else. You see, all things do work for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. And sometimes, listen to me, church, sometimes we find ourselves in situations where stuff happens. Things aren't going the way we think they should. Listen, God is not out of control. God is still in control. He knows exactly what he's doing with your life. You may not think so. You may think this is crazy. But listen, God is at work. And his word is true. And he will work all things out according to those things that he's called you to do. Listen, if God is for you, who can be against you? You know, I began to ask myself, God, why is this happening? Why didn't I make the choir? Listen, we can know that God has a plan. If there's been any good that has happened through my life, if there's any faith that has grown deep in my life, if there's any resolve that has deeply grounded the truth of Jesus Christ in my heart, listen, it did not come through the good times. Listen, sometimes it takes the crucible of life to forge character. It takes the crucible, the grinding of life that builds men and women of God. The things that Paul went through, the crisis, the challenges, caused him to be a greater man of God. And the same will happen in your life. It's those challenges, those circumstances that cause us to nurture patience, and patience works perseverance, and it causes us to become men and women of God. I want you to know tonight that God is for you. Don't judge your circumstances. Don't give up on God. Don't try to create some God that's not a God. Don't deny God. Run to God. In your circumstances, in your problems, in your challenges, make him number one, and watch what he'll do in your life. Let's pray, shall we, tonight? Father, we thank you for your word. Lord, you are a good God. You are for us, not against us. Lord, you have incredible things that you want us to accomplish. Lord, if we will trust you, if we'll put you first, if we'll seek you and nurture a relationship, Lord, there are incredible things that you have for us. Lord, help us to live a life that you can reward. Help us to live a life that you can bless, oh God, we pray. We give you glory for it in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen.